Hello, Leafs fans, and welcome to the Babbling Buds Podcast, hosted by Jordan Jacklin.
Welcome to the second episode of the Babbling Buds Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Jordan Jacklin, a twice-a-week show covering the Toronto Maple Leafs and the NHL as a whole, bringing in a mix of various analytics and the eye test when discussing players and the team. I thank you for joining me today, and to make sure you don't miss out on any future episodes, follow us on Twitter at the Babbling Buds to stay up to date on all news surrounding the show. So it is a pleasure to announce today's guest, Evan Brown, a contributor for the Intermission Sports. Make sure to follow his Twitter at _brownie6_. So the first question that I got to ask, about your Twitter name, Evan, you were originally Evan Brownie Brown. Now you're Evan Applejuice Brown. Why is that?
Throughout my years of playing sports, mostly baseball growing up, I've always been known as Brownie. My last name's Brown. That's just been what my dad's called me, what everybody's called me growing up. And then when I joined Intermission, I was the youngest member. And because I'm still in high school compared to a lot of the university students that are taking over or that are everywhere at Intermission. But it just kind of stuck because I think it might have been Dua or Alex or Drew. One of them just was like, yeah, we can all drink. We're old enough to drink, but you get to sit at the kids' table. You get to sip your apple juice while we can all sip adult drinks. So it just turned into me being called apple juice. I think Dua must have been the first person to call me that, and it's just kind of been my thing at the Intermission from now on. So I just kind of recently put that on, and I was like, you know what? It works. It sticks.
Yeah, some background information to that. Evan actually isn't even in our program yet because I'm currently enrolled in the Ryerson Sport Media program. He's scheduled. You're likely going next year, correct? Have you picked that?
Actually, I recently made the decision. I will not be heading to Ryerson next year, surprisingly.
Oh.
I know. I went behind a lot of people wanting me to go to Ryerson. I'm going to be heading to Brock next year for sports management, same program as Mr. Kyle Dubas. I'm still going to be writing stuff, still connected with Intermission people, but I'm looking to get into that field. And hey, if I can become a next Kyle Dubas, I will gladly do that. But
we could be talking to the next Kyle Dubas. Yeah, you just got to
follow
your passion,
you never know.
Man, We'll still be talking, but let's just get right into this with our Leafs news and update. So the Toronto took Game 4 yesterday by a score of 4-0 to take a 3-1 series lead against the Montreal Canadiens. A fun stat to come out of this from Luke's Fox is that prior to Tuesday's game, Toronto had lost its past 7 Game 4s when leading a series 2-1. That's just quite an insane stat. That officially has changed. So let's just take a quick blast to the past here, Evan. Which Game 4 loss hurt you the most out of the most recent examples used in Fox's article against for Sportsnet? So I'm going to run it down here for you. There was the 5-4 loss to the Washington Capitals in 2017, where the Leafs were down 4-1 after the first. Tom Wilson had 2 goals, and they nearly came back, but they would ultimately end up losing that one by a score of 5-4. Then 2019 in Boston, very similar. They were down 5-2 in Game 4 in 2019. But then they came back, and it was close, but they fell short 6-4. Which one do you remember the most, if you had to say?
See, 2018, 2019, it's been a bit cloudy for me because of everything that's happened over the past year, obviously. I do remember the Tom Wilson one, I think, just hurt more because it was Tom Wilson scoring 2 goals, and I mean, I think we definitely had a better chance in 2019. I think our 2019 team was definitely better than our 2018 team. So that one was a bit tough because I think the fact that we came back in that one and didn't win it kind of sucked. But I think the 4-1 in 2018, you said, with Tom Wilson scoring 2 goals to bring it all the way back from down 4-1, the reverse of what everybody now knows as the Leafs, and now I guess the Edmonton Oilers things of blowing a 4-1 lead in the playoffs. But we couldn't pull off the victory against Boston. So I think I'd have to go with the 2018 one.
Oh, yeah, totally. It was actually 2019. Sorry, 2018, the Leafs were barely even in it, but they were luckily able to scrape by. Because in 2019, we had that hope, right? They actually even took a 3-2 series lead. Morgan Riley scored the first goal at Game 6. We were like, oh, my God, they're going to round 2. But sadly, as we all know, that ultimately didn't end up happening.
Not
But
as good.
we do actually have some happy news to talk about this current iteration of the Leafs, and this is coming from Kristen Shilton of TSN. William Nylander said that John Tavares sent a text message to the Leafs before each game that he's on FaceTime immediately after. He specifically said, he's reminding us of what we need to do out there, what our mindset should be. Even after what he went through, he's doing his best to be the best captain that he can be. Should all the slander about him wearing the C on his chest just be put to rest? Because I can't believe there's any at all.
I am glad you were bringing this up because I cannot believe some of the stuff I saw at the start of the season too. I think it was TSN had a hit where they were talking about John Tavares' captaincy and how they thought that he didn't deserve it. They thought he didn't play well enough to deserve it, and that he wasn't the type of leader you need in the locker room kind of thing. And there was all sorts of slander going on about him. And I think he is the kind of leader that is just the strong, silent type. Like, he is the guy that will, off the ice and on the ice, not be the most vocal guy out there because he doesn't have to be. He lets his play speak for himself. And when he has to step up in the big moments, he does. And even off the ice now that he is out, we see him still interacting with the team, getting out there, still being a good leader presence. And that's what the good captains and leaders do. They make sure even when they can't perform for their team, they're making sure that those around them are doing better. And we even found out good news today that he's back at the training facility, at least reuniting himself with the guys and stuff like that after the road trip to Montreal, where they took 2 games there. So I think it's really good. I love to see him. I love to see him as the captain. I still love that he's a Toronto Maple Leaf. If you said a couple of years ago, before they signed him, that Toronto native John Tavares would be coming home and playing for his hometown team, like, I would have thought you were crazy. But now that he's finally here, it's been awesome. And I think any sort of dislike for him as a Leaf and as a captain should be just thrown out the window. It's completely unprecedented because this guy clearly has shown that he is a really, really good leader for this team.
Like, here, I'll say this, I thought Austin Matthews or Morgan Riley were more suitable options maybe at the time that was announced. And obviously we all know what happened with the Austin Matthews saga right around that time was announced with that female in Arizona. But he was clearly the right guy. He was the most mature one out of all of the options. He was clearly the guy that they wanted to build around going forward. Austin Matthews, I do think eventually will don a C on his chest, maybe after Tavares is gone. But for now, let John Tavares run the team because he's really putting in that effort, and you might not necessarily hear it through the media scrums, but we even saw it in the Leafs Blue in their own series that they do on their YouTube channel. Like, he can really get the boys fired up, And he's clearly trying his best to do that now, even after what happened to him. That injury, like, most people will not forget what happened in Game 1 for quite a long time. And he's just been able to bounce back, and he's doing whatever he can. And he's going to try to get on the ice as soon as he can. Hopefully, he'll be ready for that.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
We don't want to see anything too crazy, but let's just go into it now. Let's talk about a game by game. We're going to talk about games 3 and games 4. So let's start with the third game of this Leafs Habs series. Was the Carey Price save on Jason Spezza one of the best you've ever seen? And if not, what tops it?
Oh, I don't think anything tops it, man. That is one of the. It reminded me so much of last year before everything broke into bubbles and stuff like that. Just before, actually, with Marc-Andre Fleury, Leafs were playing. He stopped Pierre Engvall, diving the other way. It was a ridiculous save with the paddle. Nobody knew how he did it, and I think that's one of the ones that I think is comparable at least to it. It's hard to top what Price did, especially in the playoffs, especially in that moment. And I mean, for Spezza, what else could you do there, right? He had to get the better angle. He had to skate in. He had to wait until Carey Price. Well, he had to wait until he could skate in, and Carey Price just got there in time. It's a ridiculous save, and it was huge for the Canadians. It kept them in it, right? If Spezza pots that one and gives the Leafs a bit of an insurance goal there, that's pretty helpful for them. And I think Carey Price really has been their one saving grace for the Canadians so far this series. Because I think last night especially, game 1 you saw it a bit, game 2 you saw it a bit, game 3, every game so far there's been a ridiculous Carey Price save that has kept the Canadians in it. Except maybe this last game, obviously 4-0 is a bit hard to come back from, and 3-0 late in the third. But I think Carey Price has given his team a chance to win, and that's what you need, right? The reason Columbus beat us last year is because Korpisalo showed out when they really needed him most. And this was the reason the Canadians beat the Pens last year, is because Carey Price can steal series away from teams. And that was my one worry going into this series. And I mean, it's not over yet, obviously. Don't want to jinx anything. But my one worry is Carey Price would turn into the playoff goaltender we all know he is, and just destroy us, shut us out I mean, probably not shut us out every game, but do everything he can to shut us down offensively. And luckily, we've been able to pull out a couple wins, and hopefully we can finish off this series before Carey Price goes ultimate Carey Price mode.
Yeah, that save kind of reminded me of the Braden Holtby save back in the Stanley Cup Finals in 2018 when he stopped that Alex Tuch shot, just legendary. Playoff Price has shown up in a few forms, but ultimately the Leafs have been able to figure him out. And the guy that especially has been able to figure him out is William Nylander, who opened the scoring in game 3 and 4. And, just throwing the puck on the net through traffic and it deflected off of Sherrod's leg. He's been one of the best skaters on the team so far in the series. And I'm just going to run through a few stats that he has in this series so far. So he's got 4 goals for 5 points in 4 games, averaging just under 16 minutes of time on ice per game. He only played 14:34 yesterday. His goal scoring streak as well of 4 games has tied him with Wendell Clark from the 1986 playoffs. And if he scores in the next game, he will tie, guess who? Gordy Drillin for the franchise record. That was set in 1939.
Oh, 39.
Back in 1939.
Before my time.
He's doing this primarily playing on the second power play unit, despite having the highest power play points per 60 minutes in the regular season. Evan, what are your thoughts on Nylander through 4 games?
Oh, he's been brilliant. And I'm surprised. How many minutes did you say he played last night? Because
he only played 14 minutes and 34 seconds. Yeah, it seemed like he played more, but that was surprising.
I thought he was on the ice all the time, and he's dominated out there with the puck. He's got his confidence back, and he's been big for us. I mean, he's earned that nickname occasionally on Twitter, like the Big Game Bill, I think it is, which still don't sure if that really fits William. But, he's been proving people wrong a bit this season. And while he has been quieter in some roles, but he's really stepped up in the playoffs here. And, I mean, we've seen everything he's had to go throughout his career, between Steve Simmons articles, between a lot of the older Leafs fans ripping on him for stuff like that. And my papa is still not the biggest fan of William Nylander, but I think this kind of helps turn it around. He's been doing really well for us and really making himself known. I mean, they put him a bit on the power play 1 last night, but power play 2, I think he's really striving because teams don't expect it, right? They load up the PK for that first unit with Matthews and Marner, and they really try to shut them down. And then William can just come out. He's got all the confidence in the world right now and really just do what he can to score. And I think even defensively, I mean, he hasn't looked outstanding defensively, but I still think he's done enough to at least contribute defensively and get the puck out of the zone when he's had to, and still control it the way and bring it up ice the way we know he can. And I think that's been big for Nylander and the Leafs so far this series. He's easily been one of our players, if not the best player, at least skater-wise for us so far this series.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said there. And my favorite nickname for him is Willie Styles. I even got the Willie Styles sticker from Too Hot for Hockey that they've been making on my laptop right now. Yeah, I love it. Go check it out if you haven't. You can find it on their Too Hot for Hockey podcast Twitter account. But another cool thing that happened was just the complete 180 on Morgan Rielly as his poor defensive coverage with a little bit of poor positioning there, and Jack Campbell as well led to that Nick Suzuki goal in game 3. But then he comes right back on a nice passing play with Mitch Marner, and the Leafs end up taking a 2-1 lead. What were your thoughts as you saw Twitter say they forgive Rielly and they never had anything bad to say about him? I saw you were involved a little there.
Well, I mean, I can't really see it. I got the Rielly jersey on right now, but I was really excited for him, man, because everybody has kind of been ripping his defensive ability throughout this season. And I mean, he's been himself, I think, offensively, trying to step up where he can, and big on assists, which is what we know Rielly can do, and a bit of a down year scoring wise, but that's understandable when you got Austin Matthews, 41 goal scorer that you're usually playing with, and you got Marner and Hyman usually with the top guys there, top defensive pair. But I think he's been a guy for the Leafs that has just been consistent. I think he has been just all around a great player for us, and he's been running the power plays well. And despite his defensive mistake there, I think that's the type of player Rielly is, that immediately he gets back out there, doesn't get down on himself, immediately goes back out there and tries to make up for it. And we saw that with his goal there. And I think that's the type of player we need Morgan Riley to be. And that's what I expect him to be, kind of thing. That's the reason he was going back to that captain talk. That's the reason he was kind of in that captaincy talks. It's because he's been with the team for so long, been a leader, been a vet young to vet presence kind of thing for the Leafs over his career. And I mean, he's still a younger guy, but I think he's just been a great player for us. And I'm excited that he has a really solid defense partner in TJ Brodie, that he can have these offensive outbursts when he can, because Brodie is at least back and we don't have to rely on Cody Ceci, Ron Hainsey to try to stop a 2-on-1 when we have to, when they can't even catch up to half the guys on a 2-on-1, whereas Brodie can prepare for it and at least get a stick down and help out our goaltender back there.
Oh yeah, TJ Brodie has been a complete game changer for this team, and especially playing with Morgan Riley. Like, one of the components of wins above replacement, the WAR model that Jay Fresh uses, actually involves even strength defense. And TJ Brodie was in the 95th percentile out of all NHL players this season, which is consistently one of the best. And for Riley, he usually had to kind of, he had to play a little bit more defensive probably in past seasons than this one, just because he knew if he jumped up in the play too much, you got Ron Hainsey, you have Cody Ceci, Taysom. Those guys
Not
aren't
great.
able to get back. They aren't making the 2-on-1 plays that TJ Brodie made this season, and he made it look so effortless. So yeah, Riley's had some defensive blemishes this season, and it's being highlighted more. But he's a guy that always shows up in the playoffs, in my opinion, especially offensively.
Oh yeah.
He's a guy I want playing on my team. Whether you want him signed for $8 million on a 7-year contract, that's not necessarily up to me. I hope they make the right choice regarding that. It does seem like they're kind of showcasing Rasmus Sandeen to see what he can do potentially for the future of this team. But let's just move on here, because we don't need to get into the offseason. We still got games going on right now. And
exactly.
In terms of the goaltending, Jack Campbell, man, this guy's just come out of nowhere, really. And he has only allowed 4 goals through 4 games. Only allowed 2 in game 3, 0 in game 4. And, he is kind of being a little underrated by general NHL media. I'm just going to look into some advanced stats here for goalies, such as so there's the difference of the Fenwick save percentage over expected goaltenders and goals saved above expected. He ranks 2nd and 3rd out of all goaltenders to start at least one playoff game. And of course, he leads the NHL in save percentage at the moment with a .965. Evan, can he be one of those guys that gets the Leafs through this playoff run? Or do you see a scenario where Freddie Anderson might have to eventually come in?
I think Campbell can go all the way, man. He's got the confidence right now. He's looking really sharp. I mean, in that 4-0 win there, Leafs played well defensively. They didn't have too many fire drills in the zone, and even when they did have the occasional fire drill, Campbell was strong. He's been playing really well for us all season, and I saw somebody going back to that trade that brought him here originally, the Trevor Moore trade. And I think it's pretty safe to say that was a really smart move by Kyle Dubas to make that trade. Even bringing in Kyle Clifford in that trade was pretty nice for the time that he was here. But I think, Jack Campbell's been a breath of fresh air. And I think everybody ripping on Freddie is a bit much. I think everybody has kind of been jumping on the train of, oh, he's not an NHL level goaltender. Oh, he's washed. Oh, this and that, overpaid, whatever. And I think he is still a solid backup for us. And I think a fully healthy Freddie is still as good as Jack Campbell right now. And I think both of them can be starting caliber goaltenders in the NHL when you need them to be. But I think you ride the hot hand, obviously. You keep Campbell in there for as long as you can. If he starts to go cold, then you maybe try out Freddie, just get a different look in there. Like say we move on in the series against the Canadiens, which hopefully we do, barring some ridiculous leafery. Say we go into game 3 of a Winnipeg series and Campbell has not looked great through the first 2 games. Then I think you do give Freddie a shot at least to see what you have, right? Like he's getting healthier by the day. He is still a guy that is battle tested with this team. He's experienced. He knows what he's doing out there. And a lot of guys are quick to say he's washed and stuff like that, just based off the one start he's had since coming off injury and the 1 or 2 half AHL starts there. And I think I have at least enough faith in Freddie to put him in there if you have to for one game, just to either give Campbell that extra rest or if Campbell is really struggling, just to switch him in there. But ultimately, I think it's Jack Campbell's net, and it's his to lose kind of thing. I think he is going to stay our starter throughout these playoffs, however far we may go, and barring some sort of ridiculous change of pace.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And even though most teams that win the Stanley Cup usually have to use two goaltenders, I do think for the majority of this, we're going to be seeing Jack Campbell as long as he doesn't get injured. Cross your fingers, So let's just yes. Really hope. But we could actually now move on to Game 4 here because this was an interesting one. And let's just start with the Alex Galchenyuk redemption tour. Like I know he tried his best not to allude to it in the post game presser there, but he had to enjoy beating his old team and being a main contributor.
Oh yeah.
As to why, like what were your initial thoughts of his play in Game 4, especially the passes that he made?
Oh, he was ridiculous passing out there, and you love to see it, right? Like I was talking to Josh, a buddy of ours, prior to the game, and I was like, before they announced who was going to be coming out, we knew Brooks and Dermott were coming in, but we didn't know who was coming out. And I was like, originally, I was thinking, okay, Nash has done what you wanted him to do, which is do nothing when he's on the ice, with just shut down the other team when you have to, and make sure that the Canadians, because Nash obviously defensive stalwart down there, he's your nullifier, if you will, where he's not giving up goals, but he's also not scoring goals. And I thought Galchenyuk did not have the greatest of game threes, or whichever game he played. I can't remember if he played game 2 or game 3.
He did play game 2.
It was game 2, yeah. But I think you had to give Galch a shot, and I understand why Keefe went to him. And I'm glad that he showed up. I'm glad he proved me wrong in thinking that Nash should be in there instead of him. I think he did really, really well. And offensively, he really showed out. He had 2 ridiculous passes that led to goals. And I'm excited for it, man. I mean, I cannot wait. I cannot wait. I mean, he obviously had the empty netter there. That's huge. And it just brings a smile to my face seeing him score against his old team. I really hope we get to see him score on Carey Price. I really would love to see it, just because scoring against his old team, a big Selly too, would be really nice. I think Galch is the type of guy that's a bit silent, a bit stone faced in his after the game pressers. But I think if he could get a goal on Carey Price to help send the Leafs off to in the next round, if they can close out this series, I think we'll see a big Selly from him, and it would have to feel good. No matter and he knows he has to play well against his old team, and he's really shown up in Game 4 there.
Yeah, I totally agree with all your points. A no-look backhand pass to, William Nylander to open up, and then an amazing saucer pass to Jason Spezza, and then able to seal the deal at the end there. That was after an icing, by the way. So that line was not supposed to be taking a defensive zone face off. That's not necessarily a defensive line, but they've proved that they can do it. And let's talk about the other line mate that's been playing fantastic as well. And I'm talking about Alex Kerfoot. He has 5 points in 4 games, which is tied for the team lead. He went from being everybody's option in a potential Taylor Hall trade to being our second line center and stepping up in the absence of John Tavares. Some advanced stats just to kind of put his play out there, per Instat Hockey. In Game 4, he had 3 scoring chances, had a net expected goals of 1.33 and expected goals of 0.72. And a key one here, he won 8 puck battles. He's such a tenacious player. And I want to know, what do you just enjoy the most about his game? And how has he been playing so far in your eyes?
Well, you said it yourself, the tenacity. I love his tenacity out there. I love his two-way forward ability. He could jump up in the rush if he has to, but also he could be smart defensively and come back. I mean, early on in his Leafs career, we saw a bit more turnovers than I think we would have liked with Kerfoot, and people were immediately regretting getting rid of Nazem Kadri. But the more I see Kerfoot, the more I am okay with the Kadri trade. Obviously, I love Kadri. He was one of my favorite players. A bit of a downside in the playoffs, obviously, with a few suspensions, but Kadri was one of my favorite players, and seeing him go really hurt me as a fan and just growing up watching him. But once Kerfoot has started to kind of perform, obviously Tyson Barrie didn't work out the way we really wanted him to, but now that Kerfoot's here and he's playing to the best of his ability, I love him. He's doing really well. He's filled in roles where he's had to, either at center on the wing. He has really good chemistry with all these different guys in the lineup, and now he suddenly has ridiculous chemistry with Willie after not really playing much with him throughout the year. He's a guy that just gets out there and competes, and I I love it. I love it so much, and he's doing whatever he can to help the team win. And it's making me like more and more the fact that Dubas got him, and the fact that he's still on this team, because I thought even going into this season he was going to be a bit of a trade piece to try to get a bit more help defensively or something like that, or could have been used before this was obviously before draft, free agency, whatever. I thought he could have been a guy that we maybe looked at trading for a piece or something like that, but I'm glad we kept him, and I'm glad he's doing so well for us right now. I love his competitive atmosphere out there, and I think Willie even said in his morning press conference today or something like that about Kerfoot, he was asked, and he was just like, you see it in cards, you see it him playing games off the ice, and you see it on the ice. His competitiveness is there. He wants to win everything, and he wants to do whatever he can to give his team a chance to win. So I'm really liking the play of Alex Kerfoot so far.
And all I'll say is, Nassim Kadri is currently suspended and not playing, and Alex Kerfoot is leading his team in playoff scoring. Clearly the Leafs won that trade, right? Totally.
Yeah.
But just to kind of talk about some of the guys stepping up, what did you think of Adam Brooks and Travis Dermott in their series debut, going in for Riley Nash and Rasmus Sandeen, respectively? Did you like how those two players played, trying to give him a shot here in this playoff series?
Well, starting off with Brooks, it was interesting. I was really happy they brought him in. I was excited to see him play. He did well in limited action this regular season. Coming in for Riley Nash, it made sense. He had good chemistry with Thornton and Spezza throughout the year. And I thought he looked decent on that fourth line. He didn't have that great of a game, but he had a bit of feistiness in his own zone, or in the offensive zone. I still can't believe he didn't get an offsetting penalty with, I can't remember, Kulak. I think he was fighting. I can't believe he got the only penalty there, so I kind of feel bad for the guy. But I think he looked decent. I mean, he's your fourth line center, and he brings a bit of a spark offensively, and obviously has good chemistry with Spezza and Thornton. I wouldn't be surprised if they go back to him in a Game 5 scenario, because I think Riley Nash is a guy that you prefer against a Winnipeg type team because he can shut you down. You actually talked about this on your last episode, talking about how Riley Nash is a guy you'd like against a Winnipeg or a Edmonton Oilers because he's defensive. He's a defensive stalwart, and he can stop the big names like a Connor McDavid, like a Leon Draisaitl, Blake Wheeler, Scheifele, all those guys. But Montreal doesn't really have those big name guys, and I think you need to just outplay them offensively, and I think Adam Brooks really helps your team do that. As for Travis Dermott, I was a bit confused going into this one because obviously we didn't know until closer to game time that he was who he was going to come in for. And I mean, Bogo has been so good for us defensively that I was like, I don't think you can really take him out. So it looked likely that it was going to be Sandeen, and it was. I mean, he's looked really good on the power play. Obviously, had that power play goal in game 2. I'm really hyped for the kid. I am so excited to see him become a full-time Leaf. He's been great for us this playoffs. He's been great in limited action. I really want one of his jerseys, and as soon as he gets like a solidified number, because still as a tentative 38, he's kind of in a weird spot with his number, but I think Sandeen is going to be a name a lot of Leafs fans love for the next few years, and to see him out of the lineup, I was a bit surprised, but I understand what Keefe was thinking. You have to get Dermott some time, especially if you want to make a long playoff run. You're going to need 7 defensemen, 8 defensemen, and you need to have them ready, right? You don't want them to come in stone cold, and you bring in a guy who can give you a bit of a boost offensively, can give you some fresh legs, right? Coming off a back-to-back, you might as well get some lineup changes in there, see if you can spark something, get a guy who isn't as tired as probably some of the regulars and stuff like that. So it's good to see Dermott, and I mean, he didn't play that bad. I didn't think obviously, I think he probably finished the game as a even for plus minus. I don't think he was on the ice for any of the goals. Obviously, wasn't on for any goals against because there wasn't any. But I think he played decent. It's a good topic of conversation when you're talking about your 6th defenseman and you're arguing about who should be going in for your sixth defenseman on a game-by-game basis. But I think it's obviously Rasmus Sandeen's spot for the future, and I think he's going to be running the power play for this team. But it was good to get Dermott some action in case somebody did get hurt, because you never know in the playoffs, especially if you want to make a deep run.
Yeah, there's 2 things there. I think you need to get Travis Dermott's legs going a bit in this series. And the fact that he's your 7th defender anyways, and it's not Martin Marincin like in years past, is already a huge W there. Like,
Thank goodness it's not Martin
He's a
Marincin.
regular guy. Like Travis Dermott, I do think is going to go to another team next season and be a top 4 defender, whether that's Seattle. Because I see somewhat of a Victor Mete type situation there. Maybe even Mike Riley, where he's just going to go somewhere else and he's going to be able to utilize his skill set. And as for Rasmus Sandeen, a lot of coaches do this. They like to scratch the younger players sometimes. We even saw it with Dominic Ducharme and Cole Caulfield. Whether that should have happened remains, I don't know. But for Sandeen, I think it's okay to have Sandeen maybe just take one game off, watch the play, and then he can just get back in it, because I do think he will be playing the next game. I'll be pretty shocked if they
easily.
And this is setting up now for our last question, of this game by game analysis. And I just want to know, are the Leafs taking this series in 5 games, Evan?
It's a good question. Before I give that, I just want to point out one of my favorite stats of this series so far is the fact that William Nylander has tied the Canadiens in goals scored at 4 apiece. Yeah. I love that stat. But going into Game 5, I really hope they can close it out, especially for fantasy bracket challenge purposes, because I did pick the Leafs at 5, and I was a bit worried after losing Game 1. But I mean, I hope they can finish it off, but it's also not a panic situation if they can't. I mean, you're going into Montreal, they're going to have fans there, which is going to be a bit of a disadvantage for the Leafs. But I think if any team can go into an opponent's building and really quiet down the rowdy Montreal Canadiens fans, I think it's the Leafs. And if you want to hear the quietest the Bell Center's ever been with Leafs, with Canadiens fans in it, that if the Leafs can win it in Game 6 even, I think that would be just as possible as a win in Game 5. I would love to see them finish off in 5 just for stress sake and just for the sanity of Leafs Twitter, especially because we know if they lose Game 5, there's definitely going to be a few people hitting panic mode a little bit. And it's probably not going to be fun. I'm definitely turning off Twitter notifications if we lose Game 5. But there's no need to panic. If we lose Game 5, that's why we have the 3-1 lead, right? Like we have the ability to lose Game 5 and still hopefully carry enough momentum to try and complete the series in 6 or 7 games if we really had to. But obviously, you have the momentum going for you. I think they have a really good shot of winning this in Game 5. Based off of what a lot of Habs fans on Twitter were saying and panicking last night, I think they think it's going to be ended in 5. They're already calling for Ducharme to be fired, Bergevin to be fired, everybody to be fired. So I think they're thinking this series is pretty much wrapped up. And I think if the Leafs continue playing how they should be playing, and hopefully we see Foligno back as well because he's been out past couple of games. But I think if they keep playing the way they're playing, I think it's going to be a good Game 5. And I think, honestly, we're going to see the standout game that we've been waiting for from Matthews and Marner. I think it's going to be, we've had so much depth scoring. We've had so many different guys step up in the absence of JT. I think it would be a solid way to end a series with just a Matthews and Marner masterclass to finish it off.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And as long as it doesn't go to Game 7, I think I'll be okay, because if they force Game 7,
that's when we start
I'll
to
be really scared at that point. But, this is a different Leafs team than in years past. Their depth guys are currently leading the scoring right now. Like, it's not even Matthews and Marner. I know some people are disappointed with Mitch Marner's play, but he's just been excellent on the penalty kill. I don't think there's been anybody better.
Can I just make a point on that, Marner, real quick? Everybody I have seen on Twitter of just unnamed Leafs fans, because they hide behind weird account names or
calling them out,
have weird Twitter. I'm calling you out. Stop saying Marner is bad and stop hating on him for absolutely no reason. Just because he isn't scoring goals and putting up points does not mean he's washed, or does not mean he's overpaid, or does not mean anything. And obviously he hasn't had the greatest playoff career. I get that. But I think it's a bit too over. It's too much to hate on him for not having a goal per game when you have so much depth scoring. If the Leafs were losing this series, sure, you could say, okay, you need more production out of your Matthews, your Marner type players, and your top line in general. But the Leafs are winning. They're getting depth scoring options. You don't need to pick at things to point out that are bad kind of thing, or aren't as good as we're normally seeing, or whatever. I think Marner's been great defensively. I think he's done what he's had to do. On the power play, he's been doing his job. He's been getting the puck around, passing it around, trying to create different scoring opportunities. On the PK, he's been doing perfectly because the PK is perfect right now and hopefully continues to stay. Knock on wood and don't jinx it, Evan. But I think the Leafs obviously are better when Marner plays at his best and are better when Matthews is scoring a goal per night, but they haven't had to this series, so there's no reason to hate on people for the sake of hating on people. We're allowed to enjoy a 3-1 series lead, hopefully. Hopefully that doesn't go awry, obviously, but we're allowed to enjoy that, and we are allowed to be happy with how our players have played. There's no need to hate on a guy just because he hasn't been as good as you expect him to usually be offensively, kind of thing. And I think it's been a thing that it's either Willie or Nylander with Leafs Twitter, and because Willie's doing well, it's turned back into Marner. And I think it's just tough. Leafs Twitter needs to chill out. We're winning a series. We can calm down on the Marner hate. There's no need for it. He's playing well, and we just move on and hopefully can finish off this series. That's why I want him and Matthews to just have a masterclass in the final game, because if they can just take over, that'll shut up everybody on the everybody panicking or every not using their head Leafs fan on Twitter. Because if you're ranting about Marner right now, it's falling on deaf ears, or it should fall on deaf ears anyways. Like, there's no point to it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I'll just say this, Mitch Marner definitely could be doing better offensively. He is a player that a lot of people get upset for not shooting the puck. He always tries to make that extra play at times, and that can be frustrating, but I am noticing an increase in his willingness to shoot over the last few games compared to game 1 and 2. He was falling over sometimes. He has nearly scored too, especially even shorthanded. There was a great chance there in the last game with a Jason Spezza feed, I believe, but he's going to actually be able to do it soon, guys. He's going to come through. I know you're seeing what Nathan McKinnon's doing, and you're expecting that with Matthews and Marner, but there's different scenarios there, completely different circumstances. I do think Matthews and Marner will come through when the Leafs need them to, because they are your top guys. I'll be very shocked that they don't, and you have no reason to believe they won't. You have no reason to believe they won't do it, because they're winning 3-1 in the series.
Exactly, and they've had opportunities. It's not like Marner is giving the puck away every time he touches it. He's shooting the puck. Carey Price has robbed him 2 or 3 times in this series with ridiculous saves. Matthews has hit the post multiple times and has ridiculous Carey Price saves or bad bounces or whatever. They're playing well. It's just they're getting unlucky, and it's okay to have one unlucky line when the rest of your lines are on firing on top cylinders, right? So people need to calm down with the dislike of Marner and the top line right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And with that, let's head into our general Leafs questions. So we're going to do a couple over-unders here, and I'm setting the number at 5. Does William Nylander score next game to make it 5 goals in 5 games? What do you think there?
I think he has to. He loves playing Carey Price, unless they start Jake Allen, which would be a shock to us all. He loves playing Carey Price. I think he can get 5. I think there's potential for 6. I mean, it's obviously there, but I think 5 is reasonable. I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take him scoring 1. He loves scoring against Carey Price. He's been hot in this series. He's good shooters and good scorers find ways to put the puck in the net, no matter what they do. The puck follows them. Their confidence lets the puck follow them. I think he's just gonna either get a power play goal, because he's been getting close on a few there. Or he's just going to do what Willie does best, which is throw the puck on net and hope for the best.
Yeah, he has a lot of tricks up his sleeve there. And, another guy on Montreal, actually, we've seen it a little bit in Toronto so far, but you got to expect it's going to come soon, and that's Cole Caulfield. I'm putting the over-under at 0 at the moment. Does Cole Caulfield score 1 goal in this series? What do you think, Evan?
See, that's tough, because obviously I don't want him to. But based off of recent history, I mean, I'm surprised Perry hasn't potted one yet. Or did he get the first one in game 1? No, he didn't. That wasn't him. I'm surprised Perry, noted Leaf killer, hasn't gotten one yet. I'm surprised Caulfield, noted Leaf killer, hasn't gotten one yet. Even though it's been like 3 regular season games, he's still a Leafs killer, because he loves scoring against us, especially in overtime. And I'm surprised Eric Staal, although it seems like he's been kind of hurt recently. Same with Gallagher too. Gallagher looks really hurt right now. I'm surprised all 4 of those guys haven't been hurting us more offensively. And I wouldn't be surprised if Cole Caulfield puts one in. But I'm going to say, just for my own sake and for the Leafs' sake, and because of how well Jack Campbell's played right now, I'm saying he's going to finish with the goose egg. And now I know he's going to score the first shot he takes in Game 5 because I said he's going to get the goose egg. But I'm saying it. He's sticking at 0 for this series.
Wow, big. I'm going to go over. I say he does score 1 goal because I do think it's going to be a little bit more offensive in this Game 5. We've seen that in a few.
I think they have to, yeah.
I think it's going to be like a 3-2 or 4-3 game, in my opinion. Like, you have to think that eventually happens, but I do believe the Leafs will prevail there. And let's have a fun question just to end off the general Leafs question segments. Who will score the Leafs series winning goal if they can hold on? Pick the player that scores that game winner.
That's a good one. See, only because he's been a clutch player for us in his not limited, but he's been with us only for a few seasons, but he's been clutch in the playoffs for us. He's been a standout guy and a leader in the locker room. I'm going to go Jason Spezza.
Oh, really?
I'm going to go off the board. I'm going to say vintage Jason Spezza. He's been playing really well this series after taking 2 questionable penalties in Game 1. He's been playing really well. I loved his play so far. And I mean, I think Matthews and Marner, one of them are going to get one in the game. But I think it's going to be either a Jason Spezza. I think it's either going to be Jason Spezza who gets it, or it's going to be one of the top line. I think it has to be. Unless actually, no. I was going to say empty netter wins it, but that's not how that works. Empty netter isn't a game at all. Because in which case I'd go Zach Hyman. But then again, Zach Hyman also missed a wide open one in Game 4.
Oh, yeah. That was crazy.
So, I'm going to go with either Spezza or the top line. But if I had to pick a guy who I wanted to just for the fun of it, because it would be hilarious, either Galchenyuk or Mikheyev, man. I've been waiting for Mikheyev to score. He has scored against Carey Price a couple times. I'm waiting for him to get one just because the reaction on Twitter is going to be hilarious. And I mean, Galch would just be the perfect story to end it all, obviously, against his old team. But yeah, I'm going to stick with Spezza, and one of the top line has to get one, I think.
I'm going to go off the board here out of the players you mentioned. I think Nick Foligno is going to come back in Game 5. And I think he's going to score his first goal in a Leafs uniform, and it's going to be
a good storyline too.
Send them to the second round. I think that'd be. There's a lot of magical storylines that could be made here. You know, the Leafs even going to the second round is a magical storyline because it hasn't even happened in 17 years. You know, like it needs to finally happen because you saw.
Was it 2002 that they won their last series? I think I can't remember. I can never remember.
I know it's 17 years, so that would be 2004.
Yeah. 2004. Okay, yeah. So. When they last won a series, I was about 6 months old.
Oh, wow, basically. Really? I think I was two. I was 2. I was just over 2 years old, I believe. But it's just crazy, man. Like, we got to see it. And you saw with Washington in 2018, you know, their Achilles heel was getting out of the second round. And once they did it, they were just able to go all the way. We'll see if the Leafs have that similar type of reaction. But I think they're poised for a conference final appearance. I know it's likely going to have to be Colorado or Vegas that they face. And if you beat one of those teams, you can beat anybody. It's going to be pretty hard to do, though.
Before we move on quickly, though, I have a question for you, Jordan.
Of course. Throw it at me.
Do you think Game 5 goes to OT?
Oh, God, yeah.
We haven't seen OT yet. Do we see it in Game 5?
You know, that's a good question, Evan, and I'm going to say yes. You know, I think most playoff series goes to overtime. I know that in those Boston series, none of the games went to overtime, which was kind of crazy. But in the Washington-Columbus series, we've seen a lot of overtime action. We're seeing it a lot in the National Hockey League these days in all of these first-round series.
This year we've seen so many, yeah.
And I'm going to go crazy. I think I might have a heart attack. I've been watching Steve Dangle's live streams during it. I don't know if you have. He's going to go crazy if it goes to overtime.
I've caught bits and pieces, yeah.
Totally. And I'm guessing you think so as well? Or do you think it won't?
I think it has to. I think just the way series have been going this season and the way the Leafs have been playing, I think it's going to be a close game no matter what. I think because no Leafs game where it's a series clinching game is going to be not stressful one. We're not going to see 4-0 again. It's going to be a one or 2 goal game. And I think it has to go to overtime. And I'm hoping beyond belief it's off the rip. I'm hoping it's top line gets out there to start the period and it's off the rip, because I think the longer that goes on, the better. The longer OT goes on, the better Montreal has chances wise, because the Leafs, I think, can sometimes, especially in overtime, I guess it's not 3-on-3, because a 3-on-3, sometimes the longer it goes, definitely gets a bit more chaotic. But I think the longer that goes, I think the more I worry for the Leafs, just because sometimes things can get a bit out of hand. And if the longer it goes on, I'm betting Carey Price is just standing on his head. And the more confidence he gets through overtime, I'm hoping it's a close one. But the Leafs, if it does go to overtime, the Leafs have to finish it off quick, because you cannot let Carey Price get comfortable.
Well, as long as you don't pull an Edmonton Oilers and play Darnell Nurse 62 minutes and only play your top two lines, I think you'll be okay. And that's actually a good way for us to jump right into our general NHL news segment. Like, the Edmonton Oilers were swept out of the playoffs in the most surprising series so far. It even got Stephen A. Smith to talk about hockey. He's talking about hockey. I just want to know,
Don't
man.
get me started on Stephen A.
Oh, God, yeah, no, it was just crazy. What's next for the Oilers, in your opinion, after this series swept? Like, they have $22 million in cap space to work with heading into the offseason. What needs to happen in Edmonton to build a team around Connor McDavid?
I need to do something. And I mean, first of all, first thing I do, especially for the way they handled overtime, you get into triple overtime and you look at some of the ice times, as you were saying there, Darnell Nurse up over an hour. You look at some of those ice times and you had guys in your bottom six, and I know they're your bottom six, but you can't play them under 10 minutes the entire night. You played, what is that, 120 minutes of hockey? Almost, or if they played all of the third overtime, obviously, but you played over 100 minutes of hockey and your bottom six only had 10 minutes of it. I think at least when it gets to double overtime, you give them at least a few more shifts, right? Like, your top guys are so dead tired for being overworked. You got to at least play your bottom guys just to get a bit of a spark, get a bit more energy, right? Like, you got to rotate in the guys just to give your top dogs a bit more rest so they can actually catch their breath. So Darnell Nurse isn't playing over 60 minutes.
Well, that's crazy too. Just sorry to jump right in there. Darnell Nurse had his second child born hours after that.
Yeah.
That was just crazy to see. I was like, wow, that must have been on his mind too. Crazy. But like, it's just crazy. And he had to play the third most minutes in NHL playoff history. Just insane.
Yeah. And I'm just like, why aren't you playing some of your bottom six guys? I know they're worse and they're in the bottom six for a reason, but they're still NHL level guys that can score. They could move the puck up ice. Like, you're telling me a Tyler Ennis couldn't have had more minutes there and at least been an unlikely overtime hero because it's double overtime and everybody else is tired and he hasn't played for a period and a half, right? You could get him in there and he could bring you a bit of life, a bit more energy. He at least has been resting this entire time. He can skate around guys who are dead tired at that point. And I think that falls on Coach Tippett. And I wonder if I think my first decision in the offseason is to get rid of Tippett, to be completely honest with you. I have not liked the way he's handled the Oilers. And I mean, obviously GM controls the personnel on the team and stuff like that, but even the coaching style of Tippett, I think, doesn't really fit this Oilers team. And I think really that last game kind of shows it there. You have to know the situation. I get it, you're in an elimination game, and I get you're trying to win the game, but obviously you can't overwork your top players. And one of the reasons Winnipeg came down and scored that goal is because there were so many tired bodies. McDavid just gave up the puck, and then it was a horse race down to the end, and Ehlers put it short side on Mike Smith. And I think one of the things you have to do, obviously, is as well this offseason, address defense concerns. Obviously, missing Oscar Klefbom this entire season really hurt them, I think. But you need to address your depth options. You can't win off just McDavid and Draisaitl. And I mean, if you wanted to get really crazy, I was thinking about this the other day. If you wanted to get really, really crazy if you're the Oilers, if you wanted to get crazy, you do have $22 million in cap space. And I know of a disgruntled player in the league that would be quite the interesting pair for McDavid and Draisaitl.
Oh, yeah? Who is that?
Well, as you can see behind you, there's some Sabres memorabilia.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And one Jack Eichel is a bit disgruntled.
Jack Eichel to Edmonton. That's what you're suggesting.
if they have enough draft capital willing to give up, and if they have enough prospect capital they're willing to give up, if they wanted to, I think they could try to push for it. It would be a lot. They'd have to give up a lot. But for a disgruntled player in Eichel, if he asks for a trade, I wonder if, he says, hey, I'll go play with best player in the world right now in Connor McDavid and also pretty solid Leon Draisaitl. Well, sure. But I think that also means you have to be careful of what you're doing, because you can't sell the farm for him, because you still need guys depth-wise. It's pretty much contradicting what I just said about them needing more depth options. But I think the crazy idea would be to go out and get a Jack Eichel. And I wonder if they also look at some of the defensemen from the Sabres as well, see if they can try to pick up. I mean, I don't think Dahlin is going. Could be Aristolainen maybe. Could see.
I hope if Edmonton gets Rasmus Ristolainen as their savior, they're gonna be bad, man.
I don't know if that's their savior, but they need at least some depth options. They need some solid defensemen. And I mean, Ristolainen hasn't been great in his role for the Sabres, but it's at least a depth guy you could have. I think ultimately the Oilers should just be targeting depth guys in the off season and really just solidifying their team. Because obviously you have your 2 stars, you have okay goaltending. Mike Smith is getting up there in age, and I do not trust Mikko Koskinen if I'm the Oilers right now. But obviously just trying to stay healthy throughout the year and working on building up your depth, because right now you have Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, you got Nurse as your number 1 defenseman. Tyson Barrie was decent for you this year, but that's because he was playing with Connor McDavid a lot of the time in front of him. And I mean, Clefbaum hopefully is healthy enough to come back next season, that he's playing well enough. But other than that, you don't really have solid enough depth around them. And I think it's really going to be about, this offseason is going to be about building. And if you want to prove to Connor McDavid that you want him to stay with the Oilers for as long as possible, you have to, the time to start was yesterday. The time to start was last year for trying to build this team the way it properly should be built. And it's time that they really started looking at moving more draft capital and really starting to push for trying to get the help Connor McDavid really needs, because you can't expect him to carry you to the playoffs and through an entire series, let alone to the Stanley Cup.
Well, Ken Holland's mindset's clearly going to have to change from what it was at the trade deadline. Because remember that comment he made?
Too.
Not every year can be an all-in year. He's saying this as Connor McDavid puts up 100 points in 53 games, which, by the way, Rachel Dory actually tracked this for era-adjusted seasons. I believe that was the second best era-adjusted season in NHL history behind Wayne Gretzky now. Obviously, you can't. It's hard to compare different eras, but you can. That's quite telling in itself. And the fact that he nearly put up 2 points per game in a 56-game season, and you have your general manager saying it's not an all-in year when you could have acquired other guys that were available.
I don't know how that's not an all-in year.
Like, look at what the Leafs in Tampa did. They were making trades for it. Why couldn't you do that? What are you doing?
Exactly.
Who knows, man? And by the way, going back to that potential Sabres-Oilers talk, say you can't get Jack Eichel, the guy I go for is Sam Reinhart, because this guy played at a 37-goal pace, led the Sabres in scoring, playing without Jack Eichel for 38 games there, I believe. And, he played even better when Taylor Hall was traded. He was able to lead that team, and in Edmonton, he would be the 3rd or 4th guy there, Debatable whether he would be with Nugent, if he's as good as Nugent Hopkins or not, but like...
Oh, I forgot Nuge. Yeah, Nuge could stay. Could stay.
They got to re-sign him too, and I mean, you have to pay him. It'll probably be about the same, maybe just a tiny bit of a raise for Nuge, but like...
How much he's making now, you think?
He's making $6 million, so I project like a 7. He's probably gonna want 7 to 7.5, in my opinion.
I could see him getting that. I'd give him that.
And I mean, he's been there for 10 years. Like he's been through the worst, and hopefully through the best. And I got a guy that's been in that similar type of situation is Yevgeny Kuznetsov. What a disappointing season for him. Getting COVID twice, even after getting vaccinated. All sorts of rumors around this guy. The Capitals are clearly fed up with him, and they just lost to the Bruins in 5 games. Like, I just want to know what you think's next for him. Do you think he's going to be traded, and what is the most likely destination for him?
It's the cap situation is so interesting in Washington, because you have Ovechkin, obviously.
Yeah.
You gotta re-sign him. That's priority number 1 above all else. You have to re-sign him, no questions asked. Whatever he asks for money-wise, you give it to him. because it's Alexander Ovechkin, and you cannot let this guy leave you for any circumstances, especially after the dismal performance you just put up, making him frustrated beyond belief against a tough Bruins team. I think it's going to be, I don't know, Kuznetsov is such an interesting one, man, because he did not have a great year after having a decent year last year. And he struggled with injury, struggled with COVID, obviously. He's been an up and down player throughout. And I wonder if they do look at trading him. I know he's been a bit iffy on returning, and sounds like there's a bit of a shift in relationship connection there. So I think it's definitely possible that he does get traded. Where I think he would go, that becomes a whole different question. I mean, you go back to Edmonton, that could be a decent second line, first line guy. At least you give Connor McDavid. You don't have to play Draisaitl with him all the time. You could do what Sidney Crosby and Malkin do, which is two different lines, but it's just solid lines that you can roll out consistently. You could put Kuznetsov with Draisaitl. You could put Kuznetsov with McDavid, and you have
$8 million though for Kuznetsov. Like, he's gonna have to perform like an $8 million player.
That's the problem as well, his contract situation. The Oilers have enough to take on a contract like that, but do they have enough to get that contract and get the depth options they need, kind of thing, right? Because they still have so much to do, I think, to improve if you're the Edmonton Oilers. I wonder if, because you want to talk about a team that has a lot of cap space and money to spend right now, because they've just been ridiculous getting deals. And I wonder if this GM pulls off another fleecing of a trade because he's known for it. I wonder what happens with Colorado this offseason. Obviously, it depends. Obviously, it depends on what happens this season. Say they get bounced in the second round for whatever reason. Obviously, who knows what can happen with them and Vegas Golden Knights series, barring the Minnesota Wild beating the Golden Knights in 7. But I wonder what a Avalanche offseason looks like if they get bounced in the second round against a Vegas Golden Knights team or something like that. Because you have a really good situation. You have a lot of potential. Your decor is amazing. Grubauer is looking like a really solid goaltender. And obviously you got great upfront presence in Nathan MacKinnon and company. So I wonder if a Kuznetsov is a guy you can say, hey, look, I know you're making $8 million. We have maybe enough cap space to fit it under if we can shift around a few contracts. And that's a great guy to pair with a MacKinnon right there. You got two good goal scorers and two guys that could easily lead your offense and really shine, I think. And I wouldn't be surprised if they try to make a play, especially if they get bounced early. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to add a bit more offensive help, because you have your goaltender down, you have your defense down with Bowen Byram, Kel McCarr, all of those young guns coming up. I wonder if you try to really solidify your offensive game, give MacKinnon another expensive player to kind of play around, and I think you could see a Kuznetsov to Colorado deal. And I wouldn't be surprised if Washington tries to ask for they probably ask for a lot, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe even like Devin Taves or something like that. I mean, that would be a tough ask.
I wouldn't get rid of Devon Taves just because the fact that he was only traded for 2 second-round picks. I see why Washington would ask for him. They're in an interesting spot because Eric Johnson, by all accounts I've been hearing, is probably going to be an LTIR guy soon. Like, I don't know if he might be done. Yeah. Like, I don't even think he played this season, or he might have played a few games, but like, I don't know. And then obviously that frees up $6 million right there. I mean, if you can get Kadri in a third line center position again, I guess that'd be pretty good. Although we saw in Toronto, he wasn't necessarily the best in that position. So I do wonder if there could be a scenario where he goes the other way. But yeah, we've kind of been waiting for a few years here, like for Colorado to make that huge move. Like Brandon Saad was kind of their big move last year. No offense for Brandon Saad.
Which is not a big move.
That was a steal trade in itself. I mean, the fact that Nikita Zadorov went the other way, for Brandon Saad. I mean, he was a good player. I think he's even has 3 goals for them so far in those games. But it's not the big trade that everybody was expecting. Yeah, you could. I trust Joe Sakic. He's at this moment in time a top 3 GM in the whole league. So. Oh, I agree. I 100% agree. I think your top 3 GMs right now, if I had to put it out there, I mean, Steve Yzerman, obviously. I mean, he's turning around this Red Wings team. He had steals of trades at the deadline. I think that's he's been a good GM.
and is going to get the Detroit Red Wings turning around pretty quickly. I think you got to give Joe Sakic one of those top 3 spots. And the third one is an interesting one because you could go multiple different ways, right? You could go, if they go far enough and the style of play change has picked up and he's done the right moves, I think you could consider Kyle Dubas in that conversation if the Leafs go far enough. But there's
Julian Brisebois is another guy in Tampa. Like I know
Tampa.
Yzerman did a lot of work there, but his trade deadline moves last year really won them the Stanley Cup.
Yep. Brisebois is up there, and whoever's in Vegas, I can't remember his name, but he's up there.
Kelly McCrimmon is technically the general manager now. It's not George McPhee, yeah. So it'd be Kelly McCrimmon.
Yeah. He's decently up there. He's done. Vegas as a whole has done well since coming into the league.
They've been phenomenal. It's crazy that they're this good.
Oh, exactly. Especially like in their first year was ridiculous. Like the fact that they went into the playoffs and did damage when it was their first season in the NHL. It's going to be interesting, especially when the Kraken come in.
Oh yeah, I think they're going to be good too. Like they've hired all the good staff so far. They're hiring.
I think they're going to be good too.
I don't think they'll be like a Stanley Cup Finals team, but who knows? No. I mean, who knows? It's hockey. They could do it. I wouldn't be shocked though if they make the playoffs somehow.
Travis Dermott, number 1 defenseman.
Oh yeah. So it's gonna be like there's gonna be a William Karlsson type player, I think, on Seattle that just randomly comes out of nowhere and scores like 30 or 40 goals.
Trivia for you. Let's see if you can test your Leafs knowledge a bit here, because I like my trivia. I love my trivia. Who was drafted by the Leafs in the expansion draft for the Vegas Golden Knights?
Brendan Leipsic.
Brendan Leipsic is the correct answer. Good job, my friend. Good job.
Yes,
it's a forgettable name, to say the least.
Yeah, it hasn't gone too well for him. I remember a lot of people, I remember Steve Dangle even notably said this, he was so upset when they lost him, and I was upset too, honestly. I thought he was going to be a good guy. I don't think
he looked decent, but
I'm kind of glad that that's the guy we lost. And we're obviously
he hasn't really been.
We're going to lose a bigger player this time. I think they're going to trade a pick just to keep Justin Hall, maybe, and I could see Dermott maybe going the other way, but
I would definitely trade a pick to keep Justin Hall, but
totally. Yeah, and I just got one final question for you, Evan, of the show, and I want to know, what's the most exciting series been for you so far, excluding the Leafs Habs one? So which one have you kind of been watching or paying attention to the most?
Well, I mean, first of all, I would like to say a lot of Habs fans I've seen have been saying that, and a couple of non-biased fans have been saying that the Leafs Habs series hasn't been as exciting as they wanted it to be. I completely disagree. I think it's been a very exciting series, and I mean, you can call me biased, whatever, for being a Leafs fan, but I think it's been exciting. It's been what people expected, right? It was going to be hits. You kind of thought Toronto had the edge, but it was going to be high flying. It was going to be high scoring, and it was going to be intense, right? Montreal is putting up a valiant effort every single game the Leafs won, and the Leafs, after losing John Tavares, put up a valiant effort even though they had no motivation to. You're seeing really strong efforts from both sides and incredible goaltending. I think it's been one of the more underrated series so far of the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, there's no fans, right? So, if there were fans in these buildings, this would be crazy. This would be just an utterly crazy series. It would be the most talked about series, in my opinion, if there were fans.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Some of those hits, you want to imagine the crowd getting fired up for, Simmons going out. And Simmons alone is going to be one of the most loved fan-loved players once the building is back, because he's going to get guys fired up in an instant. You want to see the Scotiabank Arena light up in a second, you put Wayne Simmons out there just to hammer a guy. But as far as playoff series I've been paying attention to the most, I'd have to say it's been that Florida Tampa series. I mean, got a lot of Panthers fans in intermission and paying attention to them talking about how they don't like.
I know how much Alex loves his Panthers.
He loves his Panthers and he doesn't like his Keith Yandel. That's what I've learned.
Oh, yeah.
But that's been just a fun series to watch. I've been tuning into games here and there. It's a fun series. Those are two really, really good teams. And I mean, I predicted Tampa in 7. It still could happen. I'm still happy about that. I think I still think it's going to go to 7. And I mean, it's much to the dislike of Bomber just because it's not for his Panthers. And I think they're going to put up a valiant effort, but it's hard to go against the over the cap Lightning that are just added Kucherov and just decided, you know what, cap rules are rules. And in the playoffs, cap doesn't matter. So we can put Kucherov and Stamkos in, even though Kucherov hasn't played all year, which that's a whole conversation for the offseason in itself. But I think Tampa has a good shot this year, and I think they definitely take it in 7 games. I have my bracket here, actually. I did pick just for fun. I did pick the Leafs to win the cup just because I
Yeah,
would really like that to happen. I picked them beating Colorado in the finals,
Colorado.
which is interesting.
Whoa, that's crazy.
I have the Leafs beating Tampa in the third round. That's my third
Oh,
round
so
matchup.
do you have the Leafs winning the Stanley Cup in your bracket?
I do have the Leafs winning the Stanley
Oh,
Cup in my
okay.
bracket.
Okay.
It's going to be 6-6, and it's over the Avalanche. Who do I pick out of the East?
I believe that can't happen now, though, right? Because the Leafs would have to play Colorado in the third round.
Yeah, it messed it
Yeah.
up a little bit there with seeding and stuff like that.
I think, what if it's Toronto Boston, man? That's not going through my head. I think the fact that that's a possibility.
Boston was my pick out of the East. That's who it is.
If that actually happens, that will be the best Stanley Cup final in quite some time, I think.
If it's the
Toronto
Stanley
Boston.
Cup final, oh man, please at least let it be not a Leafy series where
Please.
it's, oh my gosh, I cannot handle more Boston Bruins fans talking to me about. I know a few of them, and they are ridiculous to try and deal with, especially at school and stuff like that. But if we could face them in a third round and if we can beat them, I mean, that would be legendary. I remember last year when I was picking my playoff matchups at the start of the year, I was saying if the Leafs were to win a Stanley Cup ever, the best way for them to do it would be to go through the teams that have done them over a bit in the past. I mean, I think my prediction that year was, I think it was something ridiculous like the Leafs would play the Bruins in the first round and beat them. I think we some reason somehow played Washington in the second round and beat them. And I picked the Islanders for them to beat in the third round just because I don't like the Islanders and I really wanted to see that happen. And also because the JT storylines would be crazy. And then I think I did pick Colorado and Toronto in the finals again last year. So, I mean, I'd love to see it again this year, especially now that the Leafs have a much better shot than they did last year against Colorado. But Colorado is going to be a good team this year. I think if Toronto, obviously I want Toronto to win it, but I think the next best team that is going to have a chance to win it, I think Colorado has a chance to win it all this year. A really strong one.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the Colorado Avalanche almost look unbeatable at this moment of time. But as we see in the playoffs, teams can be beaten. Usually the best team doesn't win in hockey. And I just want to say, Alex, Evan. Alex was the guest last episode. I just want to ask, any final thoughts here before we wrap up the show?
Well, first of all, for my final thoughts, who's your Stanley Cup pick?
Stanley Cup pick. See, I actually didn't do a bracket this year, surprisingly. I just wanted to go.
That's fine.
I didn't want to think too much about it. I just wanted to kind of let it go as it is. I mean, there's a part of me that wants to really think that Toronto is special this year, So I have to go with the Leafs. I do think.
Obviously, we want the Leafs to win, and I think we hope that it is.
But unbiasedly, if you're really going talent, it's hard for me not to say Colorado. Their Achilles heel at the moment is the second round. It's similar to Washington, honestly. If you're really talking about a team that's similar to Washington, it's the Colorado Avalanche at the moment. They have Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, Cale Makar is just another level. If you see the edge work on that guy, there's nobody that really is like him. Devontae's was such a great acquisition. Connor Timmins is a guy that can be inserted in there. Alex Newhook, they just pluck him into the lineup and he's performing. Like they just find these guys. Philip Grubauer. What I like about Philip Grubauer is they're not paying too much for goaltending. They've identified, we need to pay this much for goaltending, and we can win in the. I think they're just perfectly constructed, man. And the only team that's really going to get them the most trouble, I think, would be the Vegas Golden Knights at this point. And
that's the one thing. That's the series that I cannot wait for. That is going to be the one to watch. As long as Vegas can get past the Minnesota Wild, which I still can't believe the Minnesota Wild are in this series. Yeah. As long as they can get past them, I cannot wait for the second round of Colorado Vegas because that is going to be a dogfight. I don't know how. If that series does not go to 7 games, I don't know what will happen. That has to go to Game 7 because that would be ridiculously fun to watch. I think that is must-see TV for a Golden Knights Colorado series for sure.
And then of course fully healthy. If it ended up being Tampa Colorado, that would also be must watch, man. Because
Tampa fully healthy too, man.
I have a weird feeling though about Tampa. I don't think Tampa's going to make it to the Cup final. I just have
something feels off about them this year.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is. I mean Kucherov, obviously having him back is huge, but it just feels like the hockey gods will not smile upon sitting him out for an entire season just to bring him back for the final series. I think something tells me hockey gods won't let them get away with that for whatever
We're
reason.
Leaf fans, we know all about the hockey gods and how
Exactly.
they can easily get displeasured. Yeah, but I think
Exactly.
with that, Evan, now we're prepared here to wrap up the show. So I just want to thank everybody for listening to the Babbling Buds podcast. The first few episodes have really been great, and Evan was a great guest in this one, so thank you for coming on. And I just want to
Thanks
say,
for having me.
just as a reminder, during the playoffs, I've decided that there's so much hockey to talk about, there has to be 2 episodes a week. Every Thursday, every Sunday, you can expect a new one during this Leafs playoff run. And once again, thanks for listening and watching, and we have babbled enough for today. Until next time.